Good evening. Dave West here from Studiospares, and welcome to our webinar, Writing Your First Hits. And I am particularly excited to talk to tonight's guest and find out how he wrote his first hits, and hopefully he'll give us some tips and advice on how you and I might be able to write our first hits. Make sure you stick around because we'll be giving away one of the new Imperative Audio lucent microphones, not the blue stand that goes with it, by the way. That's a demo stand, but the new microphone. It's a multi-pattern condenser, and we're going to be giving one away at the end of today's cast. And to go with that, I thought we'd also give away one of the IsoCubes as well. So stick around, and we'll tell you what to do at the end and how you might be able to win it. So, and in fact, there might be something special for everybody that's attending tonight, but I'll tell you more at the end. But let's get to our guest. Now, tonight's guest is the one and only Ricky Wilde, who is a songwriter, a producer, a musician. He's a musical director. He's a podcaster. He's the godfather of synthwave, and he is an all-round amazing guy. Through his writing and production, Ricky's work is responsible for the sales of a staggering 10 million albums, 20 million singles, including Kids in America, UK and Cambodia for his sister Kim. His songs have also been covered by bands including Snow Patrol, Green Day's Billie Joe Armstrong, the Foo Fighters, and I found earlier on YouTube, Nirvana covering Kids in America, which is just mind-blowing. Ricky is now writing and producing with some exciting new artists, which we'll hopefully talk a little bit about in a while, and also gives time to support up-and-coming writers and artists. So, welcome, Ricky Wilde. Are you there?
I'm here, mate. Well, that's a lovely.
How are you doing?
I'm really well. Thank you for that build-up. I feel quite nervous now, but I hope I live up to your expectations, Dave.
Absolutely, you always do, Ricky. You always do.
I love you more.
I should point out that Ricky and I do know each other through a group which we might tell you a little bit about later. And we've done a little bit of work together as well, haven't we? So it's quite interesting. But so firstly, how's the tour going? Because I know you're out with Kim, but post-COVID, back out on the road. How's that all going?
It's just incredible, Dave. It's it's a palpable feeling you get on stage where everybody is just so excited to actually at last get out and have fun, and they've just stepped it up another gear, and it's just it's a wonderful experience for the musicians as well as the punters. But it's just a fantastic experience. I'm loving touring more now than I ever have. It's such an honor to be up there and still be doing it after all these years, and to have such fun with, people my age shouldn't be allowed to have such fun.
Oh, come on, you're only 40. Yeah, surely. So yeah, but it's good to be out there. To play, there's nothing like playing live. It's just the most amazing experience, isn't it? So, and you got some incredible bands, and of course, I suppose the glory for you is that you have both your sister and your daughter in the band as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do, and it's a, the band, the nucleus of the band's been together probably coming up to 20 years now. So it's another family for me. So when we go touring, it's a wonderful experience for all of us. We always have so much fun, and we're always laughing. There's always someone to have an amazing conversation with, and obviously being with Kimmy, and that's always lovely to be around her and spend time with her, and my daughter as well. She's an incredible talent, Scarlett. So it's wonderful to be with her as well. Yeah, it's great.
Scarlett has a staggering voice. She was good enough to come down and she did some tests with us, actually, with the PVB, our portable vocal booth, and she was just brilliant, absolutely on point, and just sang so consistently through the tests. She was
Yeah,
just
and she's an incredible songwriter as well. On Kim's last album, Here Come the Aliens, she co-wrote about 4 or 5 of the tracks, I think. And
superb.
yeah, and she's just got this lovely aura, and she's very relaxed and just got a lovely giving nature, and she's such a positive force of nature in our band now. And the moment she says something, everybody listens, because it always kind of makes sense, you know.
Good. Well, talking of writing, that is why we're here tonight. So yeah. I thought I might. This is always a hard thing to go into, but I think you're obviously known primarily as a writer and a producer. That's how virtually everybody I know refers to you. But you've been doing this a long time. I mean, and I think so. Was your first hit, or your first hit as a writer, was that Kids in America?
Yeah, and that was one of the first songs that I'd actually written. So it was quite an incredible rise, and it's quite scary actually to be introduced to the music industry in such a huge way, and then be told, okay, now you've done that, let's carry it on, do more and do the album. And it's kind of like, wow. And it's a lot of pressure.
What so was it the how do I put this, was it the like a chicken and egg thing, really, isn't it? Was it the artist or the song that got the attention first? Because I think didn't the song come out on Rack Records? So yes, did they pick up on Kim first, or did they pick up on the song and then you put Kim to it?
It actually started. I always wanted to be a writer and producer. I didn't really have any aspirations of being an artist. And the reason being because I released a record when I was very young, about 10 or 11, and it had a fair bit of success, and I was in all the girly magazines. And then I went to secondary school, which was an all boys school, and I found it pretty tough, to be honest with you. It was you know, it was okay towards the end, but you know, when I first got there, it's pretty tough, and you know what kids are like, they just, you know, if it's slightly different, and then they're going to go for it. So so that part of the fame thing, it really turned me off wanting to have any fame and as an artist. So for me, it was never a question of wanting to be an artist, but I thought that would be my only way into the industry. So I went into a studio in Luton called Quest Studios, which is just an 8-track studio.
I remember Quest.
Yeah, Quest, yeah. And I went into Quest and recorded 4 demos that I'd written with my dad. Actually 3 of them with dad, and 1 was on my own. And I took it around to a few record companies, and I had a bit of interest from a few, but I went to see Mickey Most, who he at that time was similar to like the Simon Cowell of today. He was incredibly powerful. He was a wonderful man, so positive, and such a lovely vibe about him. And I really had an affinity with Mickey at the moment I met him, and I just knew that I wanted to work with him, and I wanted to be on his label, or I wanted to be somehow connected to Mickey, because he was such an amazing guy. And some of the stories that he told was an incredible raconteur. And so I just really wanted to be around that kind of vibe, you know. He's such a lovely man. Anyway, so he actually saw something in me and said, yeah, come on, let's get you in the studio. So I then recorded the 4 tracks at Rack Studios with another producer, with someone else produced me, because I was only 19 at the time. And so Mickey said, you know, I think we need someone more experienced. So I said, anything, you know, to get in here. At that point, we needed some girl backing vocals on the track, and I decided that Kim should come in and do it, and because I'd heard Kim sing around the house, and I knew she could do it. So I gave Mickey a shout, and I said, look, would you mind if my sister come in to do the backing vocals? And he said, by all means. So Kimmy came up in the studio, she's singing away doing the backing vocals, and Mickey came in halfway through the session and saw Kim and was chatting with my then producer, who shall remain nameless. And he said, I'd really like to get do some work with these with this girl. She's really got something. So the arrogance of youth thought that I should be producing her, and I would do a better job. So I then went back home that night and said to my dad, said, look, Mickey really likes Kim as an artist. This could be amazing for me, because I really would rather Kim be the artist than me. Why don't we write an amazing smash hit song for Kim, book up a studio in Hartford, which is owned by a band called the Enid. And it was like they were like a commune. They used to live in the same house together, and in their basement was a beautiful studio. And being like a prog rock band they were, and they had all these incredible array of synths and guitars and drums and percussion and a load of stuff down there. It was just so well equipped. And at that time I was a huge I still am a massive Gary Newman fan. And so I was getting into all the synths and just having a wonderful time. And we came up with Kids in America very, very quickly. That was written probably the skeleton of the track is pretty much done within an hour. Dad was writing the lyrics at the time, so he was kind of like writing the lyrics as we were recording the track. And then eventually Kim put a vocal on, and that was the icing on the cake. It all sounded fabulous. Took it to Mickey. He heard it, said, that's a smash, that's #1, that's going to go. And and then the next thing, Kim finished up being the artist and I was producing her, which was exactly how I wanted it.
And it's been like that ever since, really, isn't it?
Ever since, yeah, over 40 years ago, yeah.
We should point out here as well that your dad is Marty Wilde, who
right,
obviously was an artist in his own rights through...
And still is. He's still touring.
Absolutely. He's still out there. And I know that because my mum's a massive fan, as you well know. So he's still out there doing it. So, and I noticed you've written a lot of songs with family members, which is quite not unique, but that could be a tough thing for some families to write together. So you must all have an amazing relationship.
Well, Kim and I have always been incredibly close anyway, and we're best mates, and I think it shows on the live stuff. We just have so much fun with each other on stage, and Scarlett as well. That being the family, you kind of get away with a lot more than any normal musician would in the band, and sometimes it can be very, very funny, and we just really enjoy it, but yeah, I love writing with Kim. I loved writing with Dad. I mean, with Dad, I was in the early days, it was all the albums were written with Dad. I think the first 2 albums or so, and then Kim wanted to get into the writing, wanted to get more creative, and so sometimes Dad would be out on the golf course and I would send him the track and he would be back because he was playing golf. So I'd give it to Kim and then Kim would come up with a lyric. And so it kind of like eventually it kind of morphed into Kim writing all her own lyrics. And me being like a producer and a programmer and writer, I just it was just kind of progression.
That's quite an interesting point as well, because I mean, looking behind you there, you obviously have a few guitars, and I know that's your background. You are a guitarist primarily, but as a writing process from those early days, especially in the 80s, where as you rightfully say, you'd have either a little four-track TIAC or Fostex, and you would do demos at home. Or you would have to go and hire a studio and then work that way. So the writing process really was at home on a guitar or a keyboard or so forth. But now, of course, we have every convenience all put into a nice computer that we can create all sorts of different things and mix, produce, put everything to bed in a single box effectively. So for you, how has that affected your writing process from the early days to now?
Yeah, it's sped it up remarkably. In the old days, it's quite a long process. I mean, for me, I had a little TIAC 4-track, there, you know, there are a couple of things about that. It's sometimes you do something magical on that little thing, but it just sounded a little bit hissy and a little bit crappy. And then when you come to re-record the actual master, there'd be stuff missing that you kind of missed from the demo. That demo-itis thing, Dave, you know all about that, mate.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and it's kind of it's like there's certain magic that you get when you first record and write something, and sometimes you lose that on the master. And so that's I found a little bit frustrating in those days. And also recording it twice and then going into the studio, getting drummers in, or programming up a movement drum machine was my first kit, the drum machine that I worked on, which was a nightmare. It was like constantly going out of time, and it would never sync up properly, and sometimes it'd be like 5 milliseconds late, and you'd be listening to it, is this lagging or something, and then oh, it's just a nightmare. Anyway, but all those technical problems that we used to have in those days were just so boring. I mean, it's hard enough to write a song and record the bloody thing, let alone having all the technical problems, but on top of that. But these days, having the setup that I have to be able to like save everything in the computer, come back to it a week later, and then hear different things and fine tune, automation, all this kind of stuff for automating the synths and the guitar plugins and all this kind of stuff. There's so much you can do, and so much processing power now with what I work on Apple. And it's wonderful. It's totally opened my eyes to so many different avenues of recording, you know, and I find the whole process fascinating, and I'm always on YouTube looking out for new plugins and hearing what people think about them, and seeing all the reviews, and mucking about with them and downloading them and just having a little play with them. I love it, and it's a passion, you know, and I think I think you need to have that passion in order to be able to do what we do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, but as writing a song, yeah, I mean, are there things now when it comes to physically writing, you know, a chord structure, a melody, and a vocal line, for example? Would you say there are advantages to working in the box now that weren't there before, or do you sort of miss that? Let's sit down with a guitar and come up with something. Do you, or is it, or do you still do both?
It's funny because I've always been a fairly, historically, and especially in the early days, I was a very insular writer. There were times when I'd be sitting with Dad and we wrote Kids in America together physically in the same room. But most of the time, I would say probably 70 to 80% of the time, I was on my own, and I wanted to just get the bare bones of the structure and the chords and the melody before I presented it to Dad to come up with a lyric, or Kim. Never Trust a Stranger was written that way. I literally had programmed the whole thing up, done a guide vocal, and the lyric for the chorus as well. That was all kind of like there and done. And then I said to Kimmy, come in, what do you think? And she loved it straight away. She said, I've got some great ideas. And straight away the lyric came, and Kimmy put her vocals on. Again, that was a very quick process, that song. The best ones normally are pretty quick, I think. Yeah. But so I've always been fairly insular. Even I've been working with an incredible artist called Nina, who's got the most stunning voice. I was writing some songs for her next album. I wrote a couple on her last album, Cynthian, and I was writing for her next album. And I guess we were about 7 or 8 tracks in, and she said, Rick, why don't we do this together? Because I was kind of featuring on backing vocals and solos and whatever, and she said, why don't we do this together? And I said, really? I said, I haven't done a solo album before. I just love the idea of it. And so we're actually doing my first solo album at the grand age of 60, with the beautiful Nina, so doing the vocals, and working with her has been a similar kind of process, because she lives in Berlin. I do all the programming at my place, and then I'll send over the idea with the guide vocal over. She'll listen to it, she'll say yeah or no, but when she says yes, I love it, then I'll say, how's the key? She says it could come up 4 or 5 tones. So then I'll reprogram it, and then send it over, and then she'll record her vocal over that, and then send me the vocal stem, and then I fit that into the mix that I have at my studio, and that's how we're working now. And it's that technology. We couldn't have done that back in the day, you know. So to be able to have that, it opens doors. It makes the world so much smaller, because that means that I can just work with anybody, anywhere in the world, anytime, and it's great. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think collaboration is just a massive thing for artists anyway. But I suppose there's also the advantage of being able to access different musicians and get different influences on a track. Absolutely. So if you're primarily, you know, an indie writer, for example, but you're looking for a different field, it's easy to approach a different drummer or guitarist who can, you know, spend time working on it remotely and then send it through to you. Is that something you do a fair bit of?
Well, as you know, Dave, we did this.
I wasn't leading into that, by the way. I just meant generally.
Well, generally, it depends on the artist, depends on the act, on the album. It depends on the vibe that you want to get. Sometimes I have a really clear idea of how I want a solo to sound, or a synth sound, or the drum part, and if it's somebody like Nina, then I would program all that up and do that myself. If it's an artist like Kim, then I will do a very guide programmed up version of the drums, right. And then we get Kim's drummers in to record, and record them live, and this is what we did on Here Come the Aliens, and the same with the bass. I do my rough bass. We'll get Coopsy to sing his bass on. Neil, who's probably one of the best guitarists I've ever worked with, if not the best, most incredible guitarist. Such a beautiful player and such a talent, and so I'll put my rough ideas down. Neil will then take that away, and he'll spend sometimes a good 2 or 3 weeks, sometimes really just getting into the zone of how he wants it to sound, and then, you know, eventually you'll get these beautiful guitars come back, these stems come through, and I'm always like that, you know, what we got, and every time it's just like, wow, you know, it just blows me away. So I love that process of having other people's input. And then just recently I worked with this amazing artist called Natalie Shea. Her voice is just wonderful, and we wrote probably 3 or 4 tracks, and one of the tracks I just felt needed something punchy on the bottom end, and I kind of knew that you might deliver on this one, Dave, and so yeah, the rest was history. Well, for those that don't know, I contacted Dave, and Dave very kindly put this incredible bass line on it, which I knew he would, and it just made the track for me. It really did. And to have other people's input, and to feel what they're feeling from the track is a real buzz for me as well, you know.
It is interesting as well, because I think, even you're just getting off the writing for a second, you know, as a musician, you know, often, you know, I get asked to play on tracks, and when the song is there and the vocals there and the feel is there, whatever you do often sounds great anyway. So, you know, the fact that Natalie is an incredible singer, and listen, if you don't know Natalie, go out and check out Natalie Shea. I don't know what her website address is, but just find her on YouTube. Astonishing talent, and some amazing songs that Natalie and Ricky have done. So they're well worth checking out.
And incredible live as well. We went to the gig, didn't we? We did.
Yeah, a couple of beers. That was good fun. But anyway, so for artists out there that are, you know, just coming into songwriting, or, you know, have been songwriting for a long time and haven't had the success that they might, you know, be looking for, you know, let's assume for a second that you're writing for an artist. So would you, as a songwriter, just write the song because that's how you want it to be, and then maybe try and hook that up with the singer? Or would you look to work with given singers and then write material for them? Or does it work both ways?
I think you need to find within yourself what you're comfortable writing. I mean, I saying that I love pretty much every genre. I really do, and I can really see the beauty in every genre, and I enjoy being a part of or writing a song like that, in that vein. So my writing is quite eclectic, there's a lot of artists out there that only want to write kind of indie sounding songs, or they only want to write funk, or they want to write 80s sounding songs or whatever. If you are one of those artists or writers, and you're not an artist, what I would suggest is try and find all the up and coming new acts that are happening, and contact them and say, I'm a total fan of yours. I think you're absolutely wonderful. And I've got a SoundCloud, put 4 or 5 of your tracks that you've written in that vein, and say, yeah, this is my SoundCloud. What do you think? And you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think hopefully one day that artist that you've approached will say, I really love track 2. Wouldn't mind mucking about with it. And before you know it, you've got a cut. And before you know it, you've got a relationship with that person. And that might open doors to other acts that they're working with. So that's what I would. I
mean, that's quite an interesting thing, because that is such a common question, and certainly even now, you know, talking to people that are writing, they're saying, "Listen, I've written a great song. Nobody's ever told me they've written a bad song." By the way, I'll point that out, Ricky. But we'll tell you.
I've written loads.
They'll say that they've written this great song and it would just be perfect for a particular artist. And then it's that, what do I do now? How do I approach that artist? You know, how do I get that song to them? And of course, you know, most great artists have a team around them that will bounce all sorts of contact away from the artist.
That's why I say, absolutely, Dave. That's why I say the newer artists, because they're kind of up and coming, and they'd be more open to working with you, or working with different artists, different producers and different writers. Established acts like your Dua Lipas and your Harry Styles, they'll all have production teams that they've worked with either in the, you know, as they were building up, and stuck with. It's that old adage, especially for the record company, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So to actually get a track on a Harry Styles album would be next to impossible. Even no matter how good the track is, even if it's the best song in the world, you know, it'd still be pretty tough. That's why I always that's why I suggest go for the newer acts that are coming up. And you know, if you've got an amazing song, hopefully things will you know, that will happen for that artist and your song.
There's a lot of stuff going on with, you know, YouTube, and where you're finding new artists on YouTube, and you can approach artists that way on various social platforms, of course. But
TikTok.
It's easy to go after those people, especially if you like them and you think what you're doing could, you know, fit in with what they're trying to do. You can at least approach people and start a conversation, I suppose.
TikTok is the latest one where people will just put a verse or just the chords to a verse, and they'll put it out there. They'll say, come on, anyone out there want to put a top line on this, you know, and let's see what you got, kind of vibe, you know. And that's another way, it's another approach.
I mean, do you think also, especially as a new writer, do you think it's worth, you know, trying to collaborate with other artists, with other writers, and at least trying to, you know, try different ideas with different people and see if that improves your writing? And is there an advantage to writing with different people, where by writing lots of people, you're spreading the chances, if you like, with working with other artists? Networking.
I mean, working with other artists, especially if they're working with other writers, especially if they're successful and they've had cuts in the past, that's going to heighten your chances of getting a cut. Ideally, if you can, try and actually work with the artist, because the moment that they fall in love with that song, you know that's going to get cut. So and I know that's easier said than done, but it can be done if you have enough belief and you have enough patience and positivity, you know. I think
Yeah, I mean, there's also, I suppose, different organizations, and there's different courses you can go on. There's lots of different people you can go and speak to. And in fact, you and I actually met through the Supergroup Pro, which I know they're inviting new writers and artists and performers to get involved with, and something like that's quite handy. In fact, I think Robert can put that probably into the chat room, but the Supergroup Pro, go on and check that out, because there's some interesting stuff happening over there.
Oh, it's great. It's great. I mean, for me, you know, for someone that's been in the industry for so long now, I know if there's a question that's fired at me that I don't know the answer to, I know people that will know the answer to that, and I'm trying to introduce these people into the Supergroup Pro, and the more people that we get like that, and people like yourself, Dave, who've got the years of experience and can help these youngsters. I mean, for me, you know, it's nothing other than trying to help people not make mistakes that I made, and if I can help anyone in along the way, then I'm there, you know. And I really look forward to meeting all the new writers and the new artists and all the new producers and the new programmers and the new lighting people want to get into the lights, or they want to get into the management. And it's just lovely because there's a whole network of people that know about what you're trying to do, and they're great people to draw upon, you know.
Actually, the Supergroup's been amazing, because there's probably a whole raft of songs and gigs. I'm coming to see you actually in September as well, so that'll be is it September?
Palladium on the 27th
Yes.
of September. Anybody else want to come?
Tickets still available?
Do you know what? I'm not sure they are, to be honest with you.
I think the Supergroupers have taken up most of the tickets.
I think they have.
Listen, we've got lots of questions coming, Ricky. So I might fire some at you if that's okay, if you're okay for time still. And yeah, it would be great just to get your view on these. So I haven't got names against these questions, so please excuse us. So one of the questions that's come along is, how do you find inspiration when you're struggling with writer's block? Or do you get writer's block?
You know what? I've not had writer's block for 20 years. And I don't know whether it's because the older I get, the more, how can I put this without sounding maudlin? I think I've only got a limited time left. I'm not ill, I'm fine, honestly, but I'm 60. So, you know, if I live another 20 years, I'll be absolutely thrilled. But I feel, and I've felt this kind of thing for a long time now, that I've only got a limited time to be able, I can't procrastinate. I just can't, because there's so much to do. I've got so much to do. I've got so much creativity that I want to get out of me before I peg it. And so I don't allow myself to have the luxury of having a writer's block to just say, I can't do it. I'd make myself do it, and whatever it is, whatever it takes, whether it means I've got to download another synth and listen to all the patches, or whether I go on YouTube and listen to how people do some programming and get some ideas from that, or whether it's through listening to new bands like Nina or Bunny X or Natalie Shea or Pensacola Mist, who I'm a massive fan of at the moment, or Working Men's Club, who I'm a massive fan of. There's all these new acts that are coming out, and I'm listening to what they're doing, and that it really inspires me. And I don't let myself get to that I can't do this moment.
So in a sense, you're reaching out.
Yeah, I think the moment you start saying I've got writer's block, you'll get it. You know, you need to kind of like try and not go there. Don't go there, you know.
You are what you think you are, as they say.
I really think so. I think it's a case of staying positive, and just don't let yourself get to that point of saying, right, those two words straight away, they're so negative and not helpful. And I'm not, it really doesn't, even if you say it's a bad thing, it's still there saying those words. So I just won't let that happen. And just the more you hear, the more music you hear, and the more people that you talk about music and find out about stuff. You know, it inspires you. You know, it does.
Okay. Next question is, and this is a common one actually, is, I'm interested in publishing my tracks. How do I get a publisher on board?
Okay, well, a publisher's job is to listen to your music and say, I think I can get this cut by somebody. And then once they've signed you, they will get that record and they will take it to the artist or punt it out to, or send it out to all these artists that are looking for songs. That's what a publisher should be doing. I don't think there's any publishers out there worth their salt at the moment doing that. I think the only way, I know it's harsh, but the only way is you've got to do it yourself. And there's no money in publishing apart from, you know, in the old days, there used to be ridiculous sums of money being given to by publishers to artists and writers. I mean, we're like hundreds of thousands, millions. In fact, I think Noel Gallagher, at the height of his success, I think it was like £8 million advance or something on all his publishing fee for quite a while. Nobody will get that anymore. They won't get any advances, and the reason for that is because of downloads. So there's no money in the industry on that side of it. Obviously, if you have a huge hit with Harry Styles, you're going to get radio play, which is a much better royalty you'll get from streaming. Streaming, there's hardly any income from that at all. It's not lucrative in any way, shape, or form. But obviously, with radio play and play on TV and adverts and syncs and stuff like that for films, and there's still good money to be made there. But you know, you still got to have a hit with that song, which is going to be pretty hard. I would say avoid a publishing deal because you ain't going to get anything really. They're not going to give you an advance, and they probably won't do anything. You know, they certainly won't. The chance of you getting a cut pretty remote.
It'd be true to say it's the same, and I'm probably going to get into trouble for saying this, but frankly, I don't care. It's probably the same with record companies. The days of, I mean, you know, I spent my playing career, you know, working on showcases where artists, as you rightfully were saying, were picking up advances of 100, 200, sometimes you know, 500,000 in advances. And that's when, you know, the record companies would take new artists and they would, you know, develop them. They would spend some money on them. They would let them get to the studio, work with 4 or 5 different producers and so forth to try and get their sound to develop them. And that's all gone. Now what they tend to do is to go out onto social media, see who's having some success, see who has a decent platform, i.e. following, you know, whether that's on YouTube or TikTok or whatever the case may be, and look at it as a commercial decision. And then they will sign them on that basis. But as you rightfully say, if you've done that work already and you already have that audience and that following,
ironically, that's when company. Why would you want a publisher when you're at that stage? But exactly. It's catch-22. But it's but it really, it's, you know, your best bet is to own all of your compositions, and maybe think about doing a deal once you've had your first #1 album, and there might be someone that comes along and says, you know, I'll pay you 200 grand for your next 10 years work, you know, or whatever.
Thank you very much.
And then you can think about that or not. You know, you might think, actually, no, it's not for me. I'm doing quite well as it is, thanks. So
actually, that leads us on to a question from Nicola, and she asks, what advice would you give about copywriting your works? She says, I've registered with PRS. Do I need to do anything else?
No, once you're registered to PRS, you're fine.
There you go, Nicola, sorted. Directly from Ricky. Next question is, I think we've touched on some of this. Do you start with a chord progression to match the melody, or use the melody to build on the chords?
Do you know what? It's that there's so many different ways of where a chorus comes from, and sometimes it'll be, Do you know what? A lot of I've said this before, but a lot of the time I'll go shopping, I'll be in somewhere like Selfridges, say, and the music, that's playing in the background, you can't really hear it, but you can hear the bottom end, and it's a bit muffled, and there's like, and you hear the bass line kind of, but you can't really hear the synths or the vocal line or anything. It's just that bottom end. And then I find myself sort of like coming up with ideas and singing that, and then a melody will come and I'll sing it into my phone. And a couple of weeks later, I'll be in the studio. What have I got on my phone? Before I know it, I've got that melody. And then I will work around chords and grooves and build that particular song up. That's one way. Another way is coming into the studio, mucking about with new synths that I've got, and there'll be a patch on there that's got this amazing arpeggio, and I'll do like 3 or 4 chords, and it sounds really interesting, and then a melody will spring from that. It can be a guitar riff. You know, I might listen to a band like The Sounds, who I'm a massive fan of, and there's these lovely guitar riffs, and I might sort of like be playing that riff, and then I'll just suddenly change it a little bit, and it's, before I know it, it's kind of like a new vibe, and I'm thinking, oh, this could be a new song for someone else, or for Kim or Natalie or whatever. And so there's so many different things that spark off a song, and it's never one, there's never one rule. But I would say most of the time, yes, you're right. I would work out some nice chords that really sound lovely without a vocal on. And then once I've got a nice lovely chord progression of like maybe an 8-bar or 16-bar chord progression, then I'll work on that, on the melody over the top of that. And it's, once you've got lovely chords, it makes it a lot easier to come up with a nice melody.
Brilliant. This is lovely. This is, I'll have to ask Rob who this was from, but the question is, it says, love Here Comes the Aliens album, and especially Pop. It sounds like a real love letter to some of the songs that you've written and some that influenced you. How do you approach writing? That? And was the idea to include the nods to other tracks, or was that the icing, so to speak?
It was well, actually, that the intro, the riff of Pop was directly influenced by Deadmau5, who I'm a massive fan of. I listen to Deadmau5 a lot, and so I was just mucking about with some little synthy riffs, and that came pretty quickly. And then, yeah, thinking about it, I wrote a totally different top line, and it wasn't pop music. It wasn't called pop music. It was called something else. I can't remember, but we had a totally different top line. And then I phoned Kimmy up. I'm getting confused. And then I phoned Kimmy up, and I said, look, I've got this idea. What do you think? And she came over. She goes, I really, really love it, but I just think there's a better top line we can get on it. I said, well, what do you think? She goes, leave it with me. So I took the vocal off, I gave it just the backing track. She went back home, phoned me up 2 days later and said, Rick, I've come up with this idea. I said, what's that? She goes, call it pop music. I said, okay, yeah, go on. And then she sung the top line. Pop, pop music, give me pop, pop music, don't stop with the pop, pop music. I said, yeah, I like this. And we're both pop heads anyway. We love pop. So I said, yeah. So then she came into the studio and we started recording the vocals. And then as we were writing, I said, well, maybe if we could incorporate little snippets or odes, you know, nods rather, a nod to this track. Yeah. And so there's like a little touch of Bronski beat in there, and there's little touches of Trevor Horn, there's little touches of all the songs that I grew up, that both Kim and I grew up loving and being influenced heavily by Gary Newman. And so there was all these little snippets of things that influenced that was part of our history in us evolving where we were.
That was actually I'll give a shout out because I thought it was a great question. That was Carl Bayliss that asked that, by the way.
Oh, that's such a great question. Thank you for buying the album, and I'm so glad that you love it and you love pop. It's one of our favorite tracks as well.
What was interesting with what you just said actually was that Kim had come round and said, oh, actually, I've got a different idea. And
Yeah.
I think that's quite important as well. The fact that you backed off straight away and said, "Oh, okay, let me hear it." So you were open to other people's ideas. I think sometimes writers, especially people I've worked with, are so precious about an idea that it's hard for them to let go or to develop it because as far as they're concerned, it's their baby and they don't want to change it.
It's something that I do if I'm going to be writing, if I'm in a collaboration, and we have an idea. If I come up with an idea and I quite like it, and I think this could work, and then I'll put the top line on as a guide vocal, and someone else, if someone's there and they'll be saying, yeah, I like it, but I think it could be better. I said, what do you think could be better? I said, well, I think I've got a better melody. And so my famous line is, sell it to me. So they have to then sell it to me. They have to then literally take my vocal off and then sing the better vocal that they've got. And most of the time, it is better. And I'll think, you bastard, yeah, that's really good. Okay. I love that. But if you say sell it to me, it really makes them it makes them really think and really sort of make sure they get it right before they it's not just dismissing something. They're not, because I have worked with writers in the past where I've done I'll be working on something and they're really dismissive, and that's really negative. It's a negative thing, and it's a negative emotion to pass on. And but now with that "sell it to me" line, that works for me, because at the moment, if they're not coming up with anything better, my idea stays.
Good man. So listen, I've got a few more questions here. I'm going to ask for a quick answer because the time is really getting on. We've flown past. We've been at this like 45, 50 minutes already. So it's the great company I have here. You're just amazing, Ricky. So I'm just going to throw these at you if that's all right. So hi, Ricky. What vocal effects do you like to use the most?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, obviously a bit of compression. You have to use a bit of compression on there, and that can be anything really. Waves, I love the waves effects. I use waves quite a bit. Reverb, the chroma verb, I love it on Logic. I think that sounds so good. There's some lovely reverbs on that. Logic has so many amazing plugs actually that come with the program. And I use a lot of their stuff, and I think that's really cool. But what else do I use? Do you know what? I'm just, bear with me, because I've actually got a project that I'm working on at the moment, and I want to be able to tell you what I've been.
I'll just throw in as well the if I may, because this is something I've been using a lot lately. Is this the SSL? Strips that I think basically they do a vocal strip, which is really good. But the one I've been using comes with the UC1, the controllers, and actually I've just got a UF8 as well. Couldn't help myself. And that's just loaded with some amazing dynamics. There's some really good stuff in there for vocals and for other signals as well. So it's very good. Let's move on because we'll get stuck in it. That's a quick one here. This is a great one, actually. I can't believe I didn't ask it at the beginning. What inspired, and I suppose it's a question for you and your dad, but what inspired Kids in America? Where did that come from?
Well, as I said, my father wrote the lyric to Kids in America. I think at the time it was we were in the studio. He hadn't come up with the chorus yet, but he'd written all the verses, and I think we were just literally recorded. We just recorded a Selena, which is this beautiful old synth that sounded a little bit like strings, but it wasn't really, it had its own sound, but it's quite a famous sound that was used a lot in the Gary Newman stuff. Gary used it all the time, but it's a lovely sort of synthy sound. And I just put that on, and I remember Dad said, "What about Kids in America? We're the Kids in America." I said, "Yeah, I think that could work. That's great. Love it. It's global. It's kind of like big." Did
you say to him, "Sell it to me"?
I didn't know that phrase then. I learned that phrase from another guy that I was writing with, because he said that. I said, "I think I've got a better idea," and he said, "Sell it to me," and that's where it came from. really
Brilliant.
made me think, and it's such a brilliant phrase. But anyway, but yeah, so that's
So let me shoot through these other questions quickly as well. That's brilliant, that one. But do you? The next question is: do you prefer writing in the studio with the band or at home and bringing in ideas to work on? So that's a slightly out there one, because I think this refers much more to you working with a band rather than, as you explained earlier, where you work primarily from home. So do you write at all with a band?
No, I don't. I normally write with just with Kim. I have written stuff with Neil. One of the tracks on Here Come the Aliens was me and Neil. But it's quite, every now and again somebody might chuck in an idea or something, and but generally, I've got this is my studio here in my garden, and I do all my work from here. So I literally get up in the morning, come in here and boot up my gear and just get cracking. We're doing a new album with Kim next year, so I'm literally we're going to be starting writing that soon. But yeah, I'm open to working with other people, but at the moment it's just me and Kim and Scott.
I've got three more that I'll just get through quickly, if I may, because this is a great question. I love this, and this is again a fairly honest. It's an honest question, if it's such a thing. But do you find new music technology inspiring or hindering where creativity is concerned?
I think it's inspiring, because there's always stuff to learn. Once you think you've mastered something, a new plugin will come in and it'll be either better or different, and or it has an effect that you've not heard before. Like, I don't know what's the latest one I bought. There's a chorus that I've just recently bought. I can't remember the name of it, but I bought it literally yesterday. Yeah. I was looking at it on YouTube, and they played it, and I had my headphones on. It just gave it this beautiful stereo, which is so much better than the other choruses that I've been working on. So the moment I heard that, I thought, I can't wait to get that on the track. So I think it's a really good thing, and inspiring for me as a producer.
Brilliant.
I'm sure what it's like for us.
Two more questions. Just two more questions very quickly. This is quite nice as well. Are you creative or artistic in other ways that aren't music? And does that help you with your songwriting? That's a good question.
That is a good question. Am I creative in other areas? I'm not very good at drawing. No, I'm not a great painter. I was dance captain in the band. Yeah, there you go. I was the dance captain in the band. Yeah, so I was like working out all the moves on stage, and but then Scarlett's been doing a bit of that recently. So I've been given the fucking, excuse my language, I've been given the Spanish archer.
Can you give me a beat?
So I've been given the Spanish archer on that. She's taken over. Damn
right, okay.
But yeah, but
so, I know Kim's into gardening and things now, isn't she? I'm sure she's done a few. I wonder if something as that far removed can help your performance.
Well, she has many passions, but gardening is a massive passion for her. She's loved it for years and years and years, and it's a lovely break away from music as well. Something totally different.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I
would say
more
questions for you. Oh, sorry.
Oh, go on.
All right. Okay. Do you prefer writing songs autobiographically, or do you like to explore your imagination?
I love writing songs that about experiences that I've experienced, but I also love imagining what other people are going through and trying to explain what they're going through, and imagining in my imagination what they're going through. And so sometimes I will write as a third person and writing about them, but sometimes it might actually sound like I'm writing about, I've been here, I've done that, but actually I'm writing about someone else's experience. So sometimes you could look at the news, look at the horrendous stuff that's going on in Ukraine, and you can it's straight away it puts yourself in a mindset that you can really imagine just how bad that is, and yeah, before you know it, you can draw upon their experiences.
I have one last one, Actually, not a nice question again. The questions tonight have been amazing, by the way.
Fantastic.
Very, very much.
Loving this. I'm loving it.
So we'll end with this question, which is which track that you have written means the most to you? Oh, that's a good question.
That's such a good question. Oh my. Oh my. Do you know what? There's a song that's going to be on the album that I'm working with Nina at the moment, which means a lot to me. It's called Living in Sin. But I can't really talk about that because it's not out yet. But I'll tell you what, perfect. You Came was, we had a lot of success with that track with Kim, and that was written about my little boy just after he was born. So everyone thought it was about sex, but obviously it was just about my little baby boy who's only 9 months old. Oh. And it's just a love song to my baby boy, who's now 36 or whatever he is, 37. So yeah. So UK. Well, yeah.
Excellent. Well, I love Cambodia. I love Kids, and they're just all classic tunes. Great performances.
We'll have fun at the Palladium, Dave, and hopefully we'll have a drink afterwards, and I'll enjoy seeing you.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely do that. So, to end this, listen, I'd like to thank you, Ricky, if you're still there. You've just been absolutely amazing, and you are an inspiration to many of us out there. And thank you so much for your time and giving so much up for everybody on the cast. And
well, I'd like to thank you, Dave, as well for asking me on. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege to be here, and so lovely to hear all those amazing questions. And I just hope that I've passed on some. I hope there's been something I've said that might help somebody in the future, and if so, then that's wonderful, and then that's my job done. I'll be happy with that.
Yeah, beautiful. So thanks everybody. Thanks for attending tonight, and look out for more casts coming very soon. And if you have any questions about any gear or anything, all you need to do is to hit us up on the website, email, phone number. We're everywhere. So just come and see us. Thanks very much. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.